60s saw the many nations of the world become a global community through the immediacy and intimacy of television. Television conveyed the pained faces of war, the struggle for freedom, and the exuberance of youth from around the globe. Many of the ideals of the 50s gave way to the disillusionment of a younger generation, dissatisfied with the old way and wanting change at any cost. The policies of an earlier time would come under scrutiny and attack. Social institutions, once held sacred, would crumble during these years. The unquestioning belief and support of government and its leaders was replaced by doubt as the era began. The face of world leaders changed. The youthful image of John Kennedy was replaced by the austere look of Lyndon Johnson. Khrushchev, who symbolized the Soviet Union, was replaced by Alexei Kosygin and Leonid Brezhnev. And although the face of the leaders had changed, they still represented the opposing political forces of democracy and communism. The face of music also changed. The once rebellious face of rock and roll had become subdued, almost respectable. That was until a little-known British band made their appearance known outside the British Isles. The Beatles burst on the music scene and brought energetic new sounds and revitalized the floundering genre. Beatlemania unleashed its energy onto the world, and with it, the power of youth. Beatle hairstyles became the rage, as well as the advent of the go-go. Fashion became a statement. Art reflected the avant-garde. The 60s were in high gear. When Johnson became president, he asked the American people to join with him to heal the nation's wounds.
I profoundly hope that the tragedy and the torment of these terrible days will bind us together in new fellowship, making us one people in our hour of sorrow. So let us here highly resolve that John Fitzgerald Kennedy did not live or die in vain.
In an effort to distinguish his administration from his predecessor, Johnson aspired to effect the types of social changes reminiscent of FDR's New Deal.
The Great Society rests on abundance and liberty for all. It demands an end to poverty and racial injustice, to which we're totally committed in our time.
Two of his projects were the War Against Poverty and the Great Society. And in a bold move, President Johnson quickly signed into law the Civil Rights Act.
This Civil Rights Act is a challenge to all of us to go to work in our communities and our states, in our homes and in our hearts, to eliminate the last vestiges of injustice in our beloved country.
I think the president is doing a very good job in civil rights. He has made it clear publicly and privately that he's committed to civil rights in general and to the Civil Rights Bill in particular. And from all indications, he plans to take a forthright stand on this issue, and a very consistent one.
This law was in many ways the legal culmination of the struggle for equality led by Martin Luther King. It was now illegal to discriminate according to race. But enacting a law didn't dismantle attitudes and long-held prejudices. Many U.S. cities, Watts, New York, and Newark, burned with the rage of injustice. A figure once again emerged from the turmoil of his time. Like Jack Johnson before him, a boxer would carry out the fight for equality in the boxing ring. Cassius Clay, who we all know as Muhammad Ali, had all the talent and arrogance of Johnson. Muhammad Ali not only represented the racial struggles of the early 60s, but also the growing dissatisfaction with a war that intensified as the decade progressed, Vietnam. No one could deny Ali's skill in the ring after he surprised the boxing world by knocking out Floyd Patterson. Nor his arrogance.
He's going around claiming to be the real heavyweight champion. But after I'm finished, he'll just be a prince. Now, I'm not saying this just to be funny, but I'm fighting Ernie because he needs the money.
After the Lydon match, Ali joined the Black Muslims and changed his name first to Cassius X and later to Muhammad Ali. In 1966, Ali condemned the Vietnam War and refused induction into the Army on religious grounds. For a nation struggling to remove the color barrier, this flagrant act of defiance proved to be too much. Ali's defiance of the draft prompted the Illinois Boxing Commission to suspend his boxing license, and then the World Boxing Association stripped him of his heavyweight title. Other black athletes came to Ali's defense, but it did little to sway their decision. The war that Ali refused to partake in intensified in 1964 with the Gulf of Tonkin Resolution. President Johnson inherited the conflict from Kennedy, who secretly and without securing the consent of Congress sent 15,000 combat troops, known as military advisors, to fight against the National Liberation Front, or the Viet Cong. In 1964, the Gulf of Tonkin Resolution was drafted in response to an apparent attack on a U.S. destroyer conducting espionage activities in the Gulf off the North Vietnam coast.
This new act of aggression, aimed directly at our own forces, again brings home to all of us in the United States the importance of the struggle for peace and security in Southeast Asia. Aggression by terror against the peaceful villagers of South Vietnam has now been joined by open aggression on the high seas against the United States of America. The determination of all Americans to carry out our full commitment to the people and to the government of South Vietnam will be redoubled by this outrage. Yet our response for the present will be limited and fitting. We Americans know, although others appear to forget, the risk of spreading conflict. We still seek no wider war.
The resolution gave Johnson a free hand to prevent further aggression by North Vietnam. Although he ran on the assurance that American boys would not die fighting an Asian war, Johnson decided to send 22,000 fresh military advisors to Vietnam. By 1965, 75,000 more advisors left for Vietnam. By 1966, the term military advisors became what everyone knew them to be, ground troops. The fighting was brought home each night via the nightly news programs. New words invaded our language: body bags, napalm, casualties, defoliants. The news from Vietnam brought confusion to viewers. Were women and children the enemy? What were our goals? The line between right and wrong became blurred. As draft calls increased 100%, young men fled to colleges to avoid the draft. They questioned the U.S. policy of dropping bombs and chemicals to destroy and defoliate the very country Johnson claimed to be protecting. Opposition to the war mounted. Tensions built on campuses. Businessmen began to question the astronomical cost. The war became divisive.